Here, Karis. Pass that to Karis.
So you guys all remember when we learned secondary dominance yesterday in theory class, right? Yeah, everybody remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we did. It sure was a lot of fun. Y'all enjoyed it at least, and you seem to have a pretty good understanding of it too, which is exciting. So today we're going to learn how to sing those secondary dominants. And the way that you typically see a secondary dominant appear in singing is obviously not as a chord, because we can't sing more than one note. So it's going to show up as part of the melody, and we're going to call that a chromatic element. Have you guys heard the word chromatic before?
Yes.
Yeah? What do you know about it?
It's a scale.
It's a scale? What'd you say, Warren?
Minor seconds.
Minor seconds, scale, that's not
Different name for a note.
Sounds scary.
It sounds scary. Okay. Do you guys ever work with chromatic scales when you're singing, or is that just an instrumentalist thing?
Sometimes, but not very often.
Very cool. Okay, so when we talk about a scale, we're referring to a collection of notes. So when we speak of the chromatic scale, we're referring to all the notes that count as chromatic. And as RJ was pointing out earlier, it is composed of minor seconds, which is of course the smallest interval that we have. And if you look at the piano, a minor second is, there's absolutely nothing in between. So a chromatic scale encompasses every single note. Now I'm rambling and getting off topic a little bit, so let me go back to my schedule here. I want to contrast a chromatic scale to a regular scale, or something that we're used to. So just as a reference, I kind of like to use a major scale. So when we're talking about the notes on the major scale, those are diatonic notes, right? Why do you think composers would want to use notes in a chromatic scale versus notes in a diatonic scale?
It's not in the diatonic.
Changing harmony.
It's not in the diatonic, changing harmony.
To make it sound cool.
To make it sound cool. Okay, I might combine all three of those answers to give you cool sounding harmonious options that were not previously available to you. Is that cool?
Yeah.
That's the main reason composers use chromatic harmonies. And secondary dominance in particular is what we're going to start off with singing today. And I just wanted to play y'all some quick excerpts. Y'all are pretty used to hearing things within the scale. And it's pretty colorful. There's all kinds of different colors. But when you start adding in the chromatic harmonies, it's just a lot more diverse, and you can add in things that you never would otherwise have access to. So that's why I want to take some time with you guys to learn to sing these things. Now, the reason we call secondary dominance a chromatic harmony is because they encompass notes that aren't in the diatonic scale. So, which notes in secondary dominance typically show up that don't exist in a chromatic scale?
Fee.
P.
Fee, yeah, okay, fee is one specific example. Where does fee occur in the context of its secondary dominant, or the chord that would make it happen?
Usually T.
Right. It's T of the key that's being tonicized, right? Does that make sense? RJ's nodding his head. Are you guys getting it? No? Okay, so if we're using fee, what secondary dominant are we talking about? Do you guys know? We're talking about a 5 of 5, because fee is F sharp, and essentially fee is functioning as T of G major, just for a second. Does that make sense?
If we're in C, right?
If we're in C,
Okay.
correct. Or in any key if we're including that as a secondary dominant. So, what'd you say?
All keys lead to G.
All keys lead to G, sure. I've never heard that before, that's new. So, right, that's the third of the dominant chord that's going to be altered. Now, that third always resolves up because it's functioning as the leading tone in the key that's being tonicized. Are you guys still following me? Okay, it's kind of wordy sometimes. So, when we're using that in solfege, we have every single chromatic element accounted for here. But the funny thing is they're accounted for twice. If we are in the key of C, all of this middle column is pretty straightforward. And these are pointing up because when we use chromaticism in music, the quality of whether a note is sharp or flat tells us which direction we're going. Sharp notes tend to go up, flat notes tend to continue to go down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And for that reason, when we're sharpening notes, we'll use a solfege that's very similar to the below solfege. Only we'll change the ending syllable from whatever it was previously to E. E kind of makes you think of T, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in this case, it's always going to be functioning like T. So it's going to resolve up by a half step. And that's the only tone that we're probably going to have difficulty with when we're singing secondary dominants, because every other tone is diatonic, and we've sang it before. Does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Okay, so let's try some excerpts real quick. This first one is right here. It's in treble clef. When you guys take a look at it, what all do you see? Somebody tell me about it.
There's a sharp.
There's a sharp. That is correct. Thanks, Alex. What key are we in?
C.
G or
C.
G?
Bow.
So there's an
C and G,
extra?
right. It's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? But let's go by the key signatures for now.
Okay.
Made it pretty straightforward for you guys. So key signature tells us we're in the key of C. Yes, there is an F sharp, and we know that chromatic element is probably a secondary dominant because that's what we're studying right now. Pretty straightforward. So let's sing something in the key of C to give us some context. Sing a major scale. 1, 2 on solfege.
Do, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do.
Off, thanks. Now, what's the first note?
Re.
Hey, you guys want to try it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's go from right here. 1, 2, I'm not even going to play.
Re, do, re, mi, sol, re, ti, di,
Does anyone have trouble
do.
with that?
Yeah.
Getting up to
Yeah.
Okay, let's try it with fa one time. Pretend that F sharp is not there, it's just an F natural. 1, 2, we're starting on that note.
Re, do, re, fa, sol,
Ti,
ti, do.
Right. So when we sharp that F, we go from what kind of chord? Ooh, I was kind of unclear on that. I should have used a better example. We go from a 2 chord to a 5/7 of 5. Can you guys kind of see how it's outlining that just a little bit? You've got the tonic, or the root of the 5/7 of 5 chord, the 7 of the 5/7 of 5 chord, there's the root again, and there's the 3rd of the 5/7 of 5 chord. I omitted the 5th because sometimes we can.
I thought the 7th had to go down.
Wow. That's a good question. The 7th does go down if it's sustained and it resolves directly into the next thing, but as part of a melodic line, and something that someone might be singing or performing, this doesn't necessarily have to resolve down. Also, this is not a resolve. This is another part of the same chord. Does that make sense? Cool. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's try
All
it
right,
out.
stop there.
Okay.